In brightest day, in blackest night, all other podcasts tremble in fright. Losers cower before the power. Orange is lust and blues you can trust. Indigos feel and white ones heal. Yellow scare and green ones dare. That sapphire love and black hands glove will rock your foundation without hesitation. Chad and Mark face evil's might. Respect their power, for they'll make you see the light.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chad Vogelman.
I'm Mark Marble.
And this is the LanternCast.
Episode 369.
That's right. 69.
Oh, Chad.
I'm going to throw in one of my favorite quotes right now.
Okay, wait. If you guys are really us, what number are we thinking of? 69, dudes!
Anyways, we're here to talk about San Diego Comic-Con. There was a lot out of San Diego, just like there is every year. But Mark and I chose the stuff that we wanted to talk about, and that's what we decided to hit up. So we're gonna try and break it down by sort of chunks. I guess we're gonna start off with like the comics side of things, right?
I think that sounds like a plan, Chad.
All right, so there's some actual specific stuff I want to get into, but just for the sake of conversation, that way that I'm not, just going off of a list of the comic stuff that interested me. There are two things, both involving Dan DiDio, one of the publishers of DC, alongside of Jim Lee. And there was a DC Nation panel and a DC Meet the Publishers panel, two different sort of things. And in the DC Meet the Publishers panel, and this is I'm taking this quote direct from one of the articles we found online. Dan DiDio says the following. He says, "We do these facsimile editions where we reprint older issues of comics, including all the old ads and stuff. And in some cases, these are selling more than the new comics with these characters. People are more interested in buying the stories from 30 or 40 years ago than the contemporary stories. And that's a failure on us." Now, I'm going to stop the quote there. There's more there. If we were just to take that, I'd agree with him. Then he says the following, right after this. "We should be focused on moving things forward, always pushing the boundaries and finding new stories to tell. That's how we'll survive and grow this industry." And that's where he lost me. Because now don't get me wrong. This is a fact of business in the modern era, especially as you compete with the rise of technology. Now, the rise of technology can be anything. For print mediums, it can be the rise of digital, or streaming services. It can be really anything. So you do have to push the boundaries. You do have to move things forward. I agree with you on that. And another sort of aspect I want to throw into this, I don't want to get into the whole story. I've told it on the show several times in the past. The one time I went to New York Comic Con, I met and spent time with Dan DiDio one-on-one. He was part of like a small group that I was with at New York Comic Con for maybe 45 minutes to an hour. We were just sort of in the same little group of five together, kind of walking through New York Comic Con. It was weird. It was strange how that happened, but it happened, and I got to spend some one-on-one time with Dan DiDio. Dude is a great guy. He's funny. He's, I feel like I'm like trying to set up things and just say you should respect him. The reason I say this is because when you talk about Dan DiDio, in relation to the comics industry. A lot of people see Dan as this just big figure, and he's just he's out there trying to ruin the comics, or he's stuck in the 90s and everything's dark and villainous, and whatever they try to put on Dan. And regardless of the type of man he is as a human being, you could still be right in that opinion. But they like to villainize Dan, and I don't like to go that particularly far, just because I've met the man and spent time with him, and he is a comics fan. That being said, that doesn't mean I have to agree with everything the man says. And
sure it does nowadays, Chad. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, it's all or nothing. Haven't you figured it out yet? You can never have a differing opinion. You follow somebody, you have to follow them, why follow them if you disagree? Sorry.
To me, now maybe just like in any other scenario, when you're talking out loud at a group, maybe there's context you forgot to add, but whatever. But just taking the quote on face value, to me, he's missing the point. If the comics from 30 or 40 years ago aren't selling, you're right. It is a failure on you based on what you're doing now. But the solution isn't to keep pushing forward, and essentially, here's what this says to me. The first half of this tells me, hey, we recognize a problem. Something's going on. The old stuff is selling better than the new stuff. That's a failure on us. Okay, that makes sense. But then the next part of it almost sounds like you're blaming the fans for liking the old stuff. We should be focused on moving things forward, always pushing the boundaries and finding new stories to tell. That's how we'll survive and grow this industry. Almost like he's telling the people in that panel room, okay, great, you love this old stuff, but come on, guys, keep up with us. We're going to keep pushing forward and pushing the boundaries. Like he's blaming the fans and the people buying this old stuff for liking the old stuff. Now, I don't think that's what he's exactly trying to say, but that's how it reads. And that bothers me because the classic stuff, if you're seeing the classic stuff in a lot of ways outsell the new stuff, then you're right. That's a failure on your. But why is the classic stuff outselling you? Because we don't like the new stuff. If we don't like the new stuff, then stop continuing to try and push it on us with the multiple Joker titles, the dark multiverse crap again and again and again and again and again. Like, stop trying to darken the DCU because it's not your Dark Knight Returns, dark and dank and, whatever Watchmen era DC that's outselling your current stuff. It's your classic, happy, awesome multiverse. Just holy shit, we're in the DC multiverse, and look at the sheer breadth of characters and scope of this thing that we're just having fun in. That's what's outselling you right now. So it seems like he's missing the point there. I kind of wanted to open this up a bit because I feel like you and I can have a little bit more of a unique discussion on this without just going straight into, Dan DiDio needs to step down. And to an extent, when that conversation comes up, I can sometimes agree with it depending on what happens. Depending on what Dan says, there are times when I just sort of forget that I met the man in person and go, what the is coming out of your mouth right now, Dan? But I do always take that step back. So I'm rambling. What do you think of this quote here?
If you really want him out, Chad, you could have said during your time together he touched you inappropriately. We know how that goes these days. Hashtag Chad me too. No, it's like, Dan. Okay, all kidding aside, and yes, that's what it was. And actually, this kind of ties into our last episode a little bit, how we ended the last episode, because arguably part of the reason why maybe the older stuff people are reading more is because it's more accessible. It's because you don't need to have all this backstory, and you don't need to have you need to know what happened in these 55 different stories, and or there's the last 5 years of books, or all these 55 crossovers into different things, and these one event after another. It's like, no, you just basically need you can pick up a Green Lantern story, pick up a Wonder Woman story, a Superman story, and you can pretty much understand it just by reading it, even if it's a character that had appeared before as a villain, because Lord knows in those issues they would tend to tell you when that villain last appeared anyway. So part of it, I think, is an accessibility question. Again, I do agree it is a little contradictory and it's like when the stories from 30 or 40 years ago, people tend to be able to, are more interested in, to get basically like a baseline of what a character is, what a character, without having to, like I said, to do all this research, just to get a basic understanding of what their power set is, who they are, even if you knew nothing about them. And nowadays, it's a jumping on point. It isn't as easy. There's no doubt about that. But I agree with what you're saying, is that there's a lot of, and I use crap generically here, even though some of it obviously can be, the true meaning of it can be applied. There's a lot of crap out there now that does not appeal to many people. And it doesn't mean that it might sell a little bit, but there are many storylines that are very, very either difficult to follow or just very unpopular that we have to walk through, like the Spencer run on Captain America and things like that. That there's lots of things that we get thrust upon us that completely contradicts maybe what the character has always stood for or what they've done. I think that factors in too. There's many storylines people don't like, and we can talk about a little bit of that when we get to the MCU panel, the movie stuff too, because that potentially factors in there too. But I agree. I think I do get his point. But then again, also if he really thinks that in a way the facsimile editions are getting in the way of people jumping onto new stuff, if it's kind of like hurting them, helping them get sales, but hurting them grow the industry, then probably they should be cutting back on the facsimile editions then, right? I mean, at least make it harder for people to have to, go back and read the old stories then, if you think that's actually being counterproductive.
Yeah, I'm going to have to start finding these facsimile editions, because I do buy like the reprints of stuff. Like, for instance, I don't want to say recently, because when it comes to a trade paperback, when it appears in previews and when it's actually in print, it can be anywhere from a couple of months to like a half a year full. But recently, they came out with a Hawk and Dove, the Silver Age trade paperback reprint. Man, I scooped that up like immediately. And just because I wanted to see, that stuff. Those don't have the ads and stuff that he's talking about. So I'm going to have to track some of these facsimile editions of things down. But another thing, I can't find it anywhere. There was supposed to be an Adam Strange Silver Age reprint in the same sort of design and style of the Hawk and Dove one. They also recently did a Doom Patrol one. The Doom Patrol one you can still find pretty easily, but find that Adam Strange one anywhere. So I mean, it's out of print on Amazon. That's crazy that a relatively recent trade paperback of DC Comics is out of print. That's how it's sold everywhere, and you can't find it. And that's of Silver Age content. So that's very telling. I kind of want to pick up your torch there and run with it when you mention accessibility, because there's several things I kind of want to bring up from the DC Nation panel. And I'm pulling this straight from one of the articles. The article itself says he being Dan DiDio, he took to the crowd early to ask why people were here and what they wanted from DC, admitting, quote, "I'm not sure what the business is about anymore," unquote. Citing complaints about variant covers or sales manipulations in a changing market, but he said the goal at DC is to build up the DC world in a new way that taps into the energy of DC's characters' popularity in film, TV, and beyond. But the quote, "I'm not sure what the business is about anymore," from the publisher of DC Comics is a bit disconcerting.
It's kind of like Jim from Taxi being in charge of DC Comics. It's like,
Now, I'm prepared to give him some leeway because, like it said earlier, when it comes to the emergence of technology and the evolution of things going forward, the attempt to solve the problem of print media, whether that be newspapers, books, comics, magazines, whatever, the attempt to solve that in this digital age has been an ongoing debate for years and years and years, and nobody seems to have the 100% right answer. So to feel as a publisher completely overwhelmed by that, I could see you in a stressful moment saying, I'm not sure what the business is about anymore, with relation specifically to that. But again, when I read the quote and I'm not seeing the panel, uncut and just watching it as is and not seeing the context of it, that's disconcerting.
Yeah, I would say so. I think it's I think that's probably not. That's one of those honest off the cuff comments that probably you regret. I mean, you do get brownie points for being honest, and I think that in this day and age that's kind of rare upon itself. But it's not from somebody who's in that kind of leadership position. That's really not what you want to hear. It's like, we're in a crisis. What are we going to do, Mr. President? I don't know. Beats the hell out of me.
Now, you had said accessibility, and this is part of the reason I wanted to bring up this other piece. Within this DC Nation panel, there were a couple of different creators that had come on. And one of them is going to be the new writer for the Batgirl series. And just to quote here, it says, Batgirl meeting a new villain of her own is only the tip of the iceberg for Cecile Castellucci's run. And the writer said she's still trying to figure out how working in the main superhero line works. Now, this is a quote from Cecile. This is on the panel in front of Dan himself.
She says, God, no, I'm kidding.
She says, this is all a quote. She says, I'm coming in for the first time in the DCU, and I'm coming in on a crossover event. I'm on Year of the Villain, and I have this very specific thing I'm trying to do. But then there are all these little pocket things. Pieces are taken off the table, and I'm given a direction. And then things keep getting taken, she laughed. It makes it very difficult because when you're in a shared universe and there are these moving pieces, I mean, obviously Batgirl is a big character, but she's not an engine that drives these other stories. But everyone wants to use her in different ways. And when you're the writer of that character, you've got to manage it and put the puzzle pieces together. On one hand, as a writer, it's fascinating to do. But on the other hand, it's like, oh my God, this is really hard. Now, we've interviewed a lot of people. And I think one of the instances that'll come readily to both your and I's mind is when we spoke with Ron Mars. And when we asked Ron about working in the DCU, and he says, look, it's just a fact of the business. It's DC's sandbox, and when you're in the sandbox, you have to play with the characters and leave them in the sandbox when you walk out. You have to adhere to the rules of the sandbox. So taking Ron's point of view on that and applying to that, this is not necessarily a point that I'm trying to degrade DC for, because this is something that's been going on for decades. When there's an event, everybody's got to play ball. But at the same time, it was sort of very telling that this was happening in front of Dan during this DC Nation panel, in front of the event. This DC Nation with this new writer who's one of the things it's her first opportunity on the big stage to really talk about her new series and her time writing this character. And what is one of the first things she talks about? The frustration of working around an event.
Which makes sense, and it doesn't surprise us. We've heard other things before, and it's pretty common. I mean, we remember how Van Jensen, how a lot of the stuff he was building on Green Lantern Corps got completely cut off at the knees when they were doing Convergence and other things. And from talking to Robert Venditti, we know that certain characters and certain decisions were basically thrust upon him by editorial, not necessarily Green Lantern editorial, DC editorial potentially. So it's not surprising. Again, it's one of those moments of honesty that again probably is interesting from the fans having that inside look, but it's probably, again, something you would kind of wish you maybe had phrased things a tad differently.
Before we leave the DC bandwagon behind, I wanted to, in terms of the comics, I did want to say it was mentioned as an offshoot. There was no expansion on it, but there will be some more new Elseworlds coming in the fall of this year. That was spoken about in this panel.
Is that independent of the Tales of the Dark Multiverse, or is that what you meant?
They didn't expand on it any further than saying that there will be some new Elseworlds coming in the fall. So they didn't specifically say it was that or that it wasn't that. So it could be, but that's what they said. Before we move over to the Marvel comics, I did want to talk about one Image book called the Undiscovered Country. Have you heard about this?
No, but I did click on the link, but I did not hear about this previously.
So this is written by this is over at Image Comics. It's written by Scott Snyder and Charles Soule. Sorry. It's actually Soule. And it'll start coming out in November, called The Undiscovered Country. And The Undiscovered Country was sort of announced sort of right before San Diego. But it still sort of counts because they elaborated on it a bit more. So as a quote from one of the articles I had about it. In Undiscovered Country, readers will journey into an unknown region that was once the United States of America, a land that's become shrouded in mystery and literally walled off from the rest of the world for decades. A small expedition enters the former U.S. in search of a cure to a humanity-ending pandemic. They travel inward and learn the secrets of what America has become, each member seeking their own form of truth in the undiscovered country. So essentially the pitch for this was, we followed through on the wall what happens 30 years later if you were to take it in a pseudo sci-fi way. So that was very interesting. I think Snyder took to the internet and said, okay, here's all this information we've been putting out on various social media about this title, but also think of it as of its vibe as sort of like a Land of the Lost sort of thing.
Meets Lewis and Clark. Right.
So I thought that was very interesting. Now, obviously, there's some political bents that you can apply to this, but there are very few, not very few, but every now and then there are comics that come out that get me on pitch alone, like without art, without a whole explanation. Just give me that sort of 1 to 2 3-sentence little pitch that you're supposed to give publishers whenever you're pitching a story. There's very few comics out there that'll get me on that alone. And this particular one, I was like, I'm in. And admittedly, a little bit of it was because, really, Scott Snyder and Charles Soule? All right. That's in terms of writing quality and art quality, and I'm in on the pitch. That sounds kind of cool. What did you hear about this or think anything of it?
Again, if you do read the pitch, now again, especially based on the environment that we live in right now, that it's real easy to read into that they're trying to say, it's like, but even though it's obviously, it's like building a wall, it's like building the quote unquote wall and then taking it to the umpteenth degree exponentially, but they're trying to be fair, even though as soon as you read the thing of walling themselves off, it's kind of hard not to think about, they're going to be making some political statement here. They don't, in their actual pitch, they do not make it clear that this is a byproduct of, we built the wall for Mexico, and then this is what, and then we kept going, and that might actually be in the series, but that's not in the pitch. So they're just making it sound like, because they purposely say the United States has walled itself off from the world for apparently no reason, without a reason. So based on this concept, it isn't just that we're trying to keep people out. Not necessarily. Maybe we're trying to keep something in. But either way, the point is that, the world doesn't really know why we're doing what we're doing. So that does kind of, I think, takes away a little bit of the potential political pushback to that. Not necessarily. It depends how it's handled. But I think the way they're setting it up, giving them as much credit as possible, it's trying to diffuse that to make it seem like, oh, God, here we go again, for the people who would naturally react that way. Conceptually, it sounds interesting. I don't know if I'm going to check it out or anything. But it is an interesting concept. Just like you could also read into it's an interesting concept that pretty much the world says, okay, do what you want to do until there's this massive pandemic in the world. Then people come calling to the United States, which you could also read into that if you want to, also based on history. So it's interesting. I think the concept intrigues me. I don't know if it's enough to make me want to read the book. At least I might start. Maybe I'll try the first issue. I don't know if it's something to grab me and keep it going, but it's something I will consider based on who's involved and based on the synopsis.
Before I move into the three things I wanted to talk about in terms of Marvel Comics, was there anything comic related that you wanted to bring up, or?
Well, one of the things you have mentioned, so we'll wait for that. The Doctor Doom series.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be starting that. Now, unfortunately, it'll probably go the way of like how a lot of these villain series go. That they for me, a lot of these things that I'm not sold on, they have to grab me right away, or else it's real easy for me to walk away. That's what happened with the Magneto book. It just didn't grab me in the first issue, or I think it was just the first issue. Maybe I gave it to a second, but it's like, this isn't grabbing me, so I'm moving on. The idea, the pitch they gave with Doctor Doom, which is not, Doctor Doom being basically a man without a country has been done 8,000 times to death, we know. But the way they kind of framed it, and him literally being framed for things that he didn't do, and Doctor Doom is an intriguing enough character. It probably is not it may very well not be a coincidence timing-wise, based on what's going to be happening in the MCU, that they want to start elevating Doctor Doom back again. I think I'm going to try that one. There's three books I'm going to add to my poll list for when they come out. I'm going to add Doctor Doom, I'm going to add Flash Forward, and I'm going to add the Tales of the Dark Multiverse and see. At least I'm going to try a few of those alternate versions of. Obviously, the first one is the Death of Superman. And because they have the Eradicator as a key character that was tied to Lois Lane, that obviously intrigues me and pulls me in more there. But just the fact that they're going to be taking these big, well-known events in DC history, including Blackest Night at some point, and they're going to be doing the Tales, the Dark Multiverse twist on it. Now, them being one-shots is probably not going to do it justice, really, and from my perspective. But conceptually, it intrigues me enough where I'm gonna add those three to my poll list, and we're gonna see how they go. So probably Doctor Doom and the Tales of the Dark Multiverse were the ones I think came out either right before or during Comic-Con, because I think Flash Forward was already announced before. So
yeah. So there are three things Marvel Comics related I wanted to talk about. One very, let me do these two real quickly, so they're just sort of, because they're just sort of mentioning that they exist. The Spider-Verse #1, the series that is coming out in October. It's covered by Wendell Dallett, which is a character designer on Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and we know how much I love Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It's Miles falls through a portal, and Miles finds himself at the center of an adventure across the multiverse that will feature a who's who of creators and characters as the series spins forward. But what other Spider people will Miles meet? You'll have to pick up Spider-Verse #1 to find out. Obviously, between Spider-Verse, Venomverse, Spider-Geddon, all this stuff that's been happening over the past several years. A sort of multiverse Spider-Man story is nothing new, but the fact that some of the art team behind Into the Spider-Verse and that it's focusing on Miles and sort of kind of in that sort of vein, if not in that universe 100%, it just seems like a no-brainer to me. I'm going to have to pick that up. I forget. Forgive me. Did you see Into the Spider-Verse?
Yes.
Okay. And did the concept intrigue you enough to either go back and check out Spider-Verse, or would it could intrigue you enough to pick up this issue or this series? Because you are a Spider-Man fan.
I am a Spider-Man fan. I want to watch. I have not watched it again since it's been on Netflix. It's I queued it right away, but I'm not lying. I have not. I think I have to be in the right mood for it because again, Miles Morales is not my character. So I like the movie. There were a lot of cool things in it, but I still have to be in the right mood to watch it again. I don't think from watching the movie I'd be interested in a series that is going to follow up on it. I know a lot of people probably would be, but to me, no, it doesn't do much.
Gotcha. Speaking of Spider-Man, another thing that you might be interested in, Red Goblin, Red Death #1 by writers Pat Gleason, Rob Fee, and Sean Ryan with art by Pete Woods coming in October. It says, Norman Osborn first became the Red Goblin in Amazing Spider-Man number 798 in Red Goblin, Red Death #1. Fans will find out just how much mayhem and madness the Red Goblin caused in a special one-shot coming to comic shops in October. Who else did Norman Osborn harm while inhabiting this deadly double disaster? Gleason, Fee, Ryan, and Woods promise to reveal all. So it's just a one-shot. But, I mean, I know that what issue did they just hit with Amazing Spider-Man?
I don't remember. I can't.
They're pretty high up right now, right? Like over 1,000? No, close to 1,000. I'm sure they are. I'll have to look it up. But are you familiar with what Red Goblin is?
Yeah, I remember. I picked up like the last issue of that storyline, and I did remember hearing about that, the whole Norman Osborn and Carnage combination.
Yeah, so Norman Osborn got a hold of Carnage, the symbiote, and the two became one. And I don't know, man. Just on pitch and based on the cover, have you seen the cover image for this?
Yes.
It just looks like it's all a one shot, so who the hell cares? But like, I'm down for it. A lot of people think that because of the various symbiotes and stuff, I'm down for anything symbiote, or that a symbiote fan is down for anything symbiote. Not true. I mean, like, if Carnage were to possess like Squirrel Girl, I mean, I wouldn't give a shit. But at the same time, when you say someone is already off the rocker as Norman Osborn gets Carnage, it's just like, oh, so double the insanity. What's double insanity look like? So it just immediately becomes this thing that I have to check into. So I don't know. Since you picked up the end of that story, are you going to get this thing here?
I honestly was more interested in it. That was the thing on your list that I was intrigued in, or I was interested in. I was more interested before it became perfectly clear that essentially it's a prequel, that it's just telling you what happened before all the stuff that you did see. Oh, this is behind the curtain stuff that you didn't actually get to see all the batshit crazy stuff that he did while he was. I'm still intrigued by it, but again, I might get it, but I'm not as enthusiastic about it as if it were something that was happening now. So that's kind of my take on it. It's knowing that it's already come and gone, which doesn't mean it's not going to come again, but it just means that it's not as pressing. I mean, yes, they could throw something in which makes it really important, but a lot of these things when like as an example, when after they did the Revelation storyline and when they brought back Norman Osborn to begin with, and they made it clear he was the one behind the Clone Saga and having the results be fake to make Ben Reilly appear to be the real Spider-Man and Peter was the fake. That when they did like the Osborn journals, I think, which was a one-shot. So even though they had already resolved that story arc, at least temporarily, with Norman Osborn, this was a good one-shot because basically it filled in the gap of what happened from the time Norman supposedly... We thought Norman died when he got impaled by his glider and everything, and filling in all the blanks to when he reappeared back in that storyline. So that was cool. This just seems like they're trying to capitalize on something because it looks cool, and they may have plans for him again down the road, but it doesn't seem like it's as important a buy from my perspective.
No. I mean, it's just a one-shot. It's symbiote related. I'm curious by the concept. I didn't read the OG story. I'm curious enough to go back and try and find it, just to kind of read it as its own thing. But I mean, and Pat Gleason is a writer on it, so why not? I don't know. It just seemed intriguing to me. You don't hear a lot of one-shots anymore, especially about like, hey, we're going to revisit this one random one-off thing from in the past. So that was kind of cool. Now, I guess it does sort of make sense because this will be sort of at the tail end of, if not during this whole Carnage event that they're going to have going on. But that's neither here nor there. The last thing I wanted to mention was the new X-Men stuff that's going to be coming out. And as a lot of people know, I'm not a huge X-Men fan in terms of I just follow them religiously no matter what. But I thought it was interesting that ever since they announced that Hickman was going to be doing House of X and Powers of X, that they basically, they canceled the entire X line. They let Hickman do his thing with the X-Men and kind of rein it all back in and pull it in. And then they're going to kind of relaunch the X-Men with a bunch of other little titles. So there's X-Men #1, and there's going to be Marauders #1, and New Mutants #1, and Fallen Angels #1, and X-Force #1. There's also going to be the only one I'm going to get, assuming that there's nothing in because I will be getting Hickman's House of X and Powers of X to sort of see what he's going to do. If his storylines intrigues me and maybe one of these teams is doing something interesting I want to follow, maybe I'll follow them. But based on characters alone...
Excalibur!
Yeah, that's right. Excalibur #1. Writer Teenie Howard and artist Marcus Toe joined forces to shape a new day. Mutant kind has always been special, as has their relationship with the world or worlds around them. Can the new Captain Britain forge a new way through the chaos with her companions Rogue, Gambit, Jubilee, Richter, and Apocalypse? Obviously, we know why I'm following this, Gambit and Rogue. The addition of Jubilee in there just makes it a little bit more 90s for me. I have no attachment or knowledge of Richter. The new Captain Britain, I never really had much of attachment to the old one, so maybe that'll kind of give me, an in on there. The other wrinkle I like in this is the Apocalypse idea, because wasn't Gambit at one point one of the Horsemen for Apocalypse in the 90s?
I think everyone was for the Horsemen for the Apocalypse. I know what you mean, but I'm just kidding. Because the Hulk was one too. To me, now I know why it appeals to you. When you see Apocalypse there, this just reeks of Justice League Odyssey to me. Because of Darkseid.
It does.
It does.
I mean, it does.
Come on, it has to. Yeah. It just has to.
Especially when you throw in as has the relationship with the world or worlds.
Yeah, it's like, oh, he's going to be fighting alongside of us until he becomes a bad guy, which will shock no one since he's always been a bad guy. So it would be cool if they kind of do if they kind of do a little Thanos-like with him, where Thanos has been everything in comic books. He's been a bad guy, he's been a good guy, he's been in between. So if they did something to at least make him kind of almost like an anti-hero more than that, I could deal with that, at least for now. But if we had to bet money, it's going to be a setup for him just to turn bad maybe after a year.
So just to throw out this for the other people, and I know, Mark, you're a fan of some of the X-Men as well. The Marauders will feature Kitty Pryde, Emma Frost, Storm, Pyro, Bishop, and Iceman. Let's see. New Mutants will be Sunspot, Wolfsbane, Mirage, Karma, Magic, and Cypher. Fallen Angels will be, let's see, Psylocke, Cable, X-23, and X-Force will be Beast, Jean Grey, Sage, Wolverine, Kid Omega, and Domino. And let's see, I skipped X-Men. It says Cyclops in his hand-picked squad. So from the image, oh god, I recognize Wolverine. I recognize, is that Jean Grey? I recognize, is that the Multiple Man? I don't know.
Let's gotta make sure I got this.
There's, I don't know. Is that Squirrel Girl in just like a cool suit?
Which cover is this we're looking at?
X-Men #1.
That's the one that was on the top, right? Was that the top?
Should be on the top,
yeah, okay,
above Excalibur.
All the way down. I'm not sure if that's Squirrel Girl. It might. I don't know. Is that supposed to be Madrox? What you say when the one in the background?
Yeah,
it might
the one in the background. Who's the one with the big, all the circles and art stuff around him?
Gotta be Havoc.
Oh, Havoc. Okay, there you go.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, it's gotta be Havoc.
Okay.
And with the Starjammer guys on the left, right?
I guess, yeah. Not again, but just thought I'd bring it up for those of you who are curious about what was there, because there are a lot of people who are sort of turned off by the idea of Hickman taking over the X titles and kind of condensing it down into House and Powers of X, and canceling those other series, because a lot of people, for instance, I really enjoyed X-Men Red, and stuff like that. So if you kind of went away from that and you were like, I want my X titles back, well, here you go. Here's a few of them. So if you're interested in any of these teams, I definitely follow up. Outside of Excalibur, I think I might be most interested in Marauders, because it almost gives me an Amazing X-Men vibe. When I was following Amazing X-Men at the beginning, when Firestar was a part of it, and they were, kind of quote unquote rescuing a Nightcrawler from heaven, that sort of thing. I really did enjoy that. There was a sort of swashbuckling angle to that series for a while that I really enjoyed. So Marauders almost seems like it's sort of picking up on that feel. So if I were to get anything other than Excalibur, again, it depends on how Hickman's series turns out, how these various teams are formed and what their various plots are going to be. But based on lineup and these sort of quasi solicits, really only Excalibur and maybe Marauders for me.
Not sure I could deal with Pyro being a good guy.
Yeah,
that's a hard sell. Some characters are just so inherently one side or the other, and Pyro's always been a bad guy, as far as from all my X-Men experience, so that would be a harder one to. It's not like when they first introduced Rogue, when Rogue was a bad guy, but Rogue kind of always had that streak in her, no pun intended, that was torn. That she wasn't really committed to being really, really bad, and the worse things got, and the worse things that people did around her, she was able to see the big picture better than other people. Because I still remember when there was essentially the Sisterhood of Evil Mutants, and they were teamed up with, in Rom, they were teamed up with Hybrid, which was the dire race human hybrid, which really, I guess, was Rom, technically the closest thing Rom ever got to a singular arch villain. And Rogue was one of the first ones that figured out that that they were back on the wrong side. This guy might be a mutant, but he's not. But we really should be helping the other guy take care of this. And then she kissed him, which was a whole other ball of wax, because that just kind of like not literally short circuited him, but it gave Rom feelings he didn't really want to have. But that's story for another day. Which actually it is X-Men related and Rogue related, so maybe that's something we could visit one day. That's a pretty cool crossover. But I would say, and Kitty Pryde I always liked, and Lockheed being there is kind of a nice touch. That's a pretty decent team, other than Emma Frost, who again I don't care about whatsoever. To me, she's still too much of a bad guy to really care. But again,
Yeah, I would be curious about what they do with her, because it almost seems like lately Emma Frost and Cyclops go hand in hand.
yes.
You have to play with that relationship. So if you're going to remove her from that equation and kind of put her on her own here, what are you going to do with her that's going to further the character in some way other than coming back again and again to the whole Cyclops thing?
I would agree. The funny thing is when I first saw all these titles, well, actually, let me actually say this in proper order. Normally, if I had not done what I had done earlier today, which was I think I will mention later on just because it's so interesting, the DC solicits for 2019. I mean, for October 2019. Only Green Lantern I would mention. But as I'm scrolling down the list, trying to get to where Green Lantern is going to show up, it's like, my God, there's way too many Batman books. Way too many Batman books. And the sad part is, obviously, they sell well enough as a whole that they keep publishing them. But my God, DC publishes too many Batman books. And because if I had not done that, I would just have looked at all those X-Men titles and go, oh my God, Marvel publishes way too many X-Men books, which they kind of do, and they've been doing for the most part for like the last 20, 25 years. But my God, compared to Batman, it's like the equivalent of us having our one lonely Green Lantern book. Well, at least through issue 12.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just shock. It just blew my mind. I was like, my God, I just don't get it. I mean, it really I guess it sells for them, but there's not a whole lot of diversity. If you take out the Batman books and the Superman books, you ain't got shit. Pretty much DC's putting out.
For sure. That wraps the comic talk for me. We've been at this for over half an hour, so obviously we got more out of it than I thought. I definitely appreciate the discussion we got, especially out of the Danny Dio stuff, because I think leading off of that was a good idea. It's definitely relevant to, not just DC, but including Green Lantern. It sort of ties into the way we ended the last episode. So, was there anything else comics related that you wanted to get out there, whether it be indie publisher, Marvel, DC, anything else like that, before we move on to the next bit of section of stuff we wanted to go through?
No, I think I'm good to move on.
All right, what's next?
CW, which is another thing in your wheelhouse.
That's right. So CW had a couple of trailers, sizzle reels, stuff like that. Really, the only trailer content you could talk about would be Flash, Arrow, and Supergirl. There was talk with the cast and various panels and stuff surrounding, say, Black Lightning season 3, the next season of Legends of Tomorrow. There was the Batwoman stuff. I'm sort of leaving Batwoman out of this, not to slight the Batwoman series or anything, but a lot of the Batwoman footage and stuff came out well before Comic-Con, so there's not a lot of new stuff to talk about there. Granted, we haven't talked about it much on the show to begin with, so if you want to talk about it, we can. If there's anything that caught your eye in terms of the Batwoman footage we've seen in recent weeks, but in terms of SDCC proper, the Arrow trailer showed, and it was mostly because Arrow's coming to an end next season. I think they're only doing 10 episodes.
I think that's about
yeah. A lot of what you see in this Arrow trailer is just recap, just this sort of emotional, sort of the road to the end sort of a thing that you got. There's maybe 20, 30 seconds of just this, of just flashes of what's happening in these 10 episodes. Not a lot of real substance to talk about. I mean, if you want, you could talk about the fact that it looks like Tommy is there, that Laurel has a new look and haircut as Black Canary. For those of you following the Arrow series, this is not Laurel as we know her. This is Black Siren from Earth 2, who is quote-unquote replaced Laurel as the DA and as Black Canary. She's kind of on this journey from villain to heroine. And all of this, you could find some stuff to break down if you wanted to. I think that obviously the only real interesting part thus far in terms of Arrow is that it's ending, and that, this seems like it's going to be the death of Oliver Queen in this Crisis event, which is nothing new in terms of San Diego stuff. So then from there you move on to Supergirl. Supergirl's interesting to me. A lot of people either A, enjoy it, or B, complain about it because they feel it's too preachy. Did you watch the trailer for Supergirl?
I will openly admit, no, I did not watch that one.
Okay, the trailer for Supergirl, a lot of people feel that Supergirl can get too preachy sometimes, and at times I sort of agree. Not in a butthurt, sort of way, but just sort of in it's a little on the nose, a little more on the nose than I would expect. But at the same time, I kind of step that back and think about it for a minute, and I'm just like, well, if any sort of series is going to be preachy and talk about, like, so for instance, the main thing here, and you'll have to watch the trailer to understand how they do this, but they're the kind of the villain this season, or the moral villain, not the actual villain this season, is how nobody pays attention to things anymore, and we're all buried in our technology and stuff like that. How they make that a problem for Supergirl to tackle and all this stuff in the modern era, that's, just watch the trailer if you're curious. But the fact that people don't pay attention to the world around them and all these things, the idea that if someone's going to deal with that, the fact that it would be an L makes sense to me, because if Supergirl is supposed to stand for hope and all these good things and these good ideals, really then they should also be dealing not just with villains but with ideals as well, both positive and negative. So that sort of makes sense to me. I'm not going to blame Supergirl and criticize it for being preachy the way some others would, but I did feel the minute I started watching it, I feel, we're going to get a lot of complaints from people about this one too. Not for me, but I'm sure there will be a bunch of it's being preachy again, sort of complaints from those who want to take down the Supergirl series a peg. New costume. Have you seen at least that she's wearing pants, a full body suit? I think it looks cool. My problem isn't the suit. The bangs look weird to me, but I'm a dude who's been single for over a decade, so what do I know about women's hairstyles? Who cares?
And plus, you'll bang anything at this point. But I'm bummed. Sorry, Chad.
No worries. I think the big thing here to talk about is the Flash. The Flash trailer seems to have the most actual content in it in terms of what's to come. Did you see the Flash trailer?
Well, of course I did, Chad.
Alrighty. Well, should we play the audio?
Yes. You gonna play it, or you want me to play it?
You go ahead and play it there.
All right. You ready?
Yeah, go for it.
My name is Dr. Ramsey Rosa. And for the last decade, I've spent my life dedicated to a single cause, helping others fight the diseases that plague humanity. But not anymore. And it's all because of them. You see, there are many cancers in this world, and they all wear different faces. Some are doctors, like me. Some of them seek out the truth, regardless of the consequences. Others mock the very science they worship.
We just ran out of time.
But the most dangerous ones are those who call themselves heroes. They claim to fight for the things that matter in life. Truth, family, law, order. And most of all, for life itself.
Hang on! I got you! What the hell? Why is it every time I come to visit, there's always a crisis?
But it's all a lie. Because in the end, there's only one battle. One thing to fight against. An eternal enemy who must be eliminated forever. And that's death itself.
Are we under attack?
The scientifically impossible probably will happen. I don't need to understand them. Just tell me what I can do.
No one has to die. Ever. Again.
right. What do you think about that? I mean, you don't watch as much as the entirety of the CW verse as I do, but you do pay attention to the Flash. So what do you think about all that?
Seems to be different from a threat perspective. It seems like, at least giving credit where credit's due, they seem to be doing a little bit different. Even though obviously we had actually technically we had more than one speedster even in last season, but they have been trying to spread the wealth around as far as the big bads not just being speedsters. So I do like, at least on the surface, that they continue to do that. I also like, from based on everything we know about the season, that it's supposed to pick up like almost immediately after they lost Nora. So you get, so that the impact of that is not, they don't gloss over it by 6 months later we begin our story. We pick up. So I do like that fact. Obviously Cisco is going to begin it for the season for some part of it. He's not gone immediately, though he is supposed to be gone this season. It's interesting. It does make me wonder how much longer the Flash has to, as far as most people I think still like the Flash per capita more than they like where Arrow is overall over the last few years, but I still don't know if it's something that it might, the repetition of the characters, I think might be getting to the point of diminishing returns. But I'm interested. I liked last season. I did like last season. I know a lot of people didn't like Nora, and a lot of people thought Nora ruined the season. And yes, if Jessica Parker Kennedy wasn't so damn cute and likable, then even the fact that her character was so friggin' annoying probably would have bothered me more. But I'm willing to. I'm going to start the season, and we'll see if it grabs me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in. I do love that actor. Forgive me, I forget his name, but he played Mohinder in Heroes. I always thought he did very well in that series. He was one of the better, more compelling individuals, I thought, in Heroes. I felt during even though I was younger, I felt during Heroes a lot of the actors in that series, their portrayals seemed either, you could tell they were acting, it seemed wooden or whatever. I thought the guy who played Mohinder did a very good job. Let's see, Mohinder actor, what's his name? Senthil Ramamurthy. And obviously I'm probably saying that wrong, but he does great stuff. I actually, I'm a huge, some people may know if you listen to the show a long time. I'm a big fan. I'm not a big fan of crime dramas, but there's one I will rewatch over and over and over again, which is Numbers. And there was an episode of Numbers where he showed up in, and I recognized him immediately. But anyways, so this villain is called Bloodwork. And he's actually a new villain. And by new, I mean DC Rebirth new, which is interesting because one of the things I was a bit put off by at the end of Supergirl's season was the fact that they said Leviathan is coming, which is a big event, obviously, that's happening right now in DC. So they're obviously, mining a lot of the recent stuff for content. But I guess as long as the adaptation works, then I guess who cares, when/where it comes from.
And don't forget they had Godspeed last season too. Not that they did a hell of a lot with him, but Godspeed technically, which is another rebirth era villain for Flash.
Well, one of the things they also mentioned about this season is that it's going to be split into, I want to say half, but also sort of thirds. The first main half, or mostly of the first third, is going to be the whole stuff with Bloodwork. Then, of course, we're going to be dovetailing into the Crisis, and then the I guess the kind of follow up to the Crisis and the after effects of it. And then the second half of the season, or third of the season, is going to be involving primarily a different villain, which they haven't announced yet. A lot of people obviously were assuming Reverse Flash, given the way last season ended, but we honestly don't know. But in terms of Bloodwork, just from Comic Vine, because I'm not familiar with the character, so I looked it up. Ramsey Rosso was a scientist that has hemophilia. Because he couldn't risk himself, he tried to find a cure, so Ramsey tried to change blood, so instead of helping humans age, it would preserve them and make them invulnerable and immortal. After injecting himself with the new blood that he had created, Ramsey gained invulnerability and the ability to control blood, a secret he would keep for years on end. So it looks like his first appearance was the Flash number 29. I'm guessing that's Rebirth, the Flash 29. And then issue number 30 starts Bloodwork. Issue number 30, man, was published in November of 2017. So, yeah, and Bloodwork had a 2-issue cross. It had 2 issues. Issue 30, 31, he first appeared in 29. He appeared again, I guess, in issue 38 and again in issue 61. But, yeah, that's, man, five issues of the Flash, essentially. And all of a sudden he's in the TV show. That's interesting.
It is interesting.
On the one hand, it's like, okay, we're not going to be as chained to the source material. We can kind of have fun with this. Hey, this was a cool concept. We could really do something with this, but all we have are to work with are on bare bones, so we're good. So I mean, I guess it just depends on where they go from here. Not a lot of stuff out about Crisis, although they did talk a bit about some of the people who are going to be appearing. The big announcement, of course, that Brandon Routh will be reprising his role as Superman, and he will be the Kingdom Come Superman.
Well, I think there's conflicting reports about whether that's actually going to be the case.
Okay, well, that's what I saw, but at the very least, he will be reprising his role as Superman.
And Burt Ward's going to be in it. We just don't know if he's going to be Robin.
Yeah.
Linda Carter supposedly is going to be in it.
I'm really hoping for some Tom Welling, Michael Rosenbaum action.
Tom Welling actually is. That's another one. Tom Welling is supposed to be. He is supposed to be. So,
I mean, Crisis is going to be cool. I did mention over on Twitter, though, and I'll say it here because this kind of garnered some conversation over on Twitter. A lot of, some people agreed with me. I mean, a lot of people agreed with me, but let me see here. I just wanted to make sure I quoted myself accurately here. I said Barry Allen and Oliver Queen are Hal Jordan's 2 closest friends. If Ollie is done during the CW's Crisis event and Hal doesn't make an appearance as Green Lantern, then I'm calling it. GL will never appear in the CW verse. So, yeah. It said someone responded. And said it's crazy because the Green Lantern universe is so vast and has reached every corner of the DC universe. It's annoying they're being left out. Maybe because CGI would be too expensive for TV. And I said they spent money on having a giant CGI demon fight a giant CGI alt-universe blue Furby. It's not too expensive. They're avoiding it. So yeah, I mean, we're coming at the end of the CW news here. We just talked about the comics in general. Clearly, guys, there's no news about Green Lantern. It's out of San Diego, and it's just sort of furthering the idea that DC is trying to distance themselves as much as possible from the character right now. So the fact that they have this huge Crisis event and are making all these announcements about various other characters showing up, but this seems like the perfect platform to sort of be like, oh, and some guy with an emerald ring is coming up. Whether they want to bring in Hal or they want to do the thing where they're going to placate to some of the fans who I personally don't like the theory, but it doesn't mean it doesn't have a lot of traction and fans out there. The idea that John Diggle is John Stewart Diggle. They did play with that in this most recent crossover when Flash from the other universe came over and said, hey, John, where's your ring? That sort of a thing. Regardless whether they do John Stewart or Hal Jordan, if they don't do Green Lantern in the Crisis event, the biggest crossover they've ever done, then if they don't do Green Lantern, they're just I kind of feel like they're never going to do it. So
I would tend to agree.
yeah. All right. Anything about Crisis or any of the CW shows?
No, it'll be interesting to see what they do with Crisis on Infinite Earths. Last year's crossover actually I thought was pretty decent, and I usually don't watch them. So obviously this is the stakes are a little higher for this one. So we'll have to see how they pull that off.
One thing I forgot to mention, I don't know if you saw, I read somewhere that Tom Cavanaugh, who plays obviously all the various versions of Wells and stuff, he will also be playing Pariah.
Yes, I read that too.
So that's kind of cool. We'll see how that. I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? Because wasn't the origin of Pariah that he was a scientist who, like Krona, pushed himself too far?
I think that is correct.
I mean, you take the idea of it being a Wells. I mean, all we ever knew of Pariah was that he was Pariah. I don't think did we ever get Pariah's real name in the comics?
I'm looking now to see if we did. Yeah, Kel Massa.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Well, I mean, that's not something that was such a big deal that they can't change it for this. So, I mean, just really the idea that you have to play with is that if you're going to stick with the actual origin of Pariah, his origin is much like Krona's. So, just mad scientist pushes his experiment past the boundaries he knows he shouldn't, and out of his own id and ego. And, obviously in Crisis it was a bit of a different thing, but essentially he believes he's the one who starts the white wall of energy and the red skies and all this stuff that destroys the universe, and it's his fault. So, depending on where they actually go with this Crisis, I guess we'll see. But the idea that A. Wells could be Pariah is, interesting. So, what else we got?
So, well, moving into the general stuff now, I suppose, the general TV and movie stuff before we wrap it up with probably be the lengthiest segment, I would suspect, even though we got a lot of the comics segment. So just general movie stuff. Most of this stuff actually doesn't intrigue Chad as much as it intrigues me, but obviously we got more. They had a Terminator panel, and I saw some of the footage. It didn't change my opinion all that much one way or the other. In fact, but the most interesting thing about the Terminator news, and it just came out casually in Jim Cameron's little presentation, was that Eddie Furlong, who of course played John Connor in T2, is going to be back playing John Connor in this movie. Since Eddie Furlong's had a lot of personal issues, we haven't seen, and he really hasn't done much on the acting front lately. That was kind of you can actually hear like the visible gasp in the audience, or like, whoa, that was kind of surprising. Technically, this was before Comic-Con, but Halloween, we got the official confirmation that yes, they are doing 2 Halloween sequels. Halloween Kills and Halloween Returns, which will be coming out in back-to-back years, not that ridiculous rumor that they were going to be coming back, being released in the same month, which made no sense whatsoever. And Jamie Lee Curtis is at least signed on, I think, for both. Both McBride and David Gordon Green are supposed to be back to do those. So that's what I found interesting. Did you actually watch the Top Gun trailer?
Yes and no. I watched it without audio just because of the situation at the time. So I did see it. I didn't hear it or anything like that. Another problem here is it's not that I've never seen Top Gun. It's I may as well have not seen it because I saw it so long ago.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Top Gun is it really is a super cheesy movie as far as I'm concerned. That being said, visually it was very well done. Those flying scenes were pretty impressive. I mean, the one thing one can never take away from Tom Cruise is he literally pushes the envelope. It may be the death of him one day filming a movie, but he certainly doesn't play games. So that definitely was I think from a nostalgic perspective, that probably got a little bit of interest in the fact that he showed up, and I don't think any of that was expected. I think that was pretty neat. Cats, obviously they showed the trailer for Cats, and that got a really, 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 really mixed reaction. Seems like a lot of people are not happy with the CGI, making them they kind of look a little too human, which I thought was interesting. I mean,
I didn't watch it. I have no attachment to Cats. Not much of a musical person to begin with, in terms of actual musicals. But yeah, I did see some stills of it, and that's all I need to see.
Based on where we are, I kind of expected some people to start protesting because they were taking roles away from deserving feline actors who should have gotten those roles. I was kind of expecting that. That's a movie called Cats, and you're hiring humans over cats? Get the lawyers. I thought. Let's see. I watched The Watchmen, trailer, the second trailer, which it still intrigues me a little. I have no idea how much I'm going to. I have no idea what that show is going to be about. But
yeah, I haven't seen the new footage. I saw the original footage when they first released the first teaser or whatever of it, but I haven't seen this new stuff yet.
I mean, it adds a little more, let's say, intrigue to it. But again, there's so much we don't know, other than the fact that clearly this takes place after everything that happened with Adrian and Dr. Manhattan. And even though you actually kind of get glimpses of Dr. Manhattan supposedly on Mars, I think very, very small in that trailer. So I thought I wanted to mention that. The Game of Thrones panel was just interesting, just because Benioff and Weiss decided not to show up. Whether they really had a reason not to show up because they're so hard at work on their doing the preliminary work on the Star Wars trilogy, or because they knew they were going to catch holy hell from the fans for season 8. Either way, it's not a good look. Just like Ruby Rose, for whatever reason, not going to the not being there for the Batwoman stuff. Probably not a good. But I think Benioff and Weiss are going to catch more hell because they actually are the creators. So the panel did seem that it was a little. The Game of Thrones seemed a little contentious on some level. Not nasty, but it just seemed like people were clearly not happy with what happened, which doesn't surprise us. Before we get into, from my perspective, to wrap this up, I wanted to mention, since we talked about this last show, the idea that like I told you, I did as soon as I got the email, the little pop up from Entertainment Earth, I made sure I pre-ordered my Jaws eating Quint.
Yeah, you said you got the Man Thing pop.
I honestly thought I was channeling my inner Bokelman on that one, because it wasn't complete. It was a pure impulse buy. I mean, it looks cool. The pop does look really cool.
Yeah, see, I really did want it. The problem with it, I think, is, first of all, I've never liked the bobbleheads, and I'm not sure I was willing to roll the dice on a front-facing spring bobblehead. Like, maybe it would end up getting bent and dip too low or something like that, and I don't know. I do want it because I do want like a Swamp Thing pop and a Man Thing pop. Just having those swamp creatures, the designs of those pops look really cool. It is comic accurate, and I did say I'm going to be collecting the comic accurate stuff. So I probably should have bought it so that I don't have to pay ridiculous upcharge prices later on. In terms of what was already out and what I was actually going for, I don't know, I just decided to pass it up. But I was surprised when you said you picked it up.
Like I said, it was an impulse buy, and mind you, Chad, it is still available on Entertainment Earth for pre-order. It is not sold out for pre-order. $15. It is, yeah. It's an odd design because of the way they have the head attached. I probably, well, who knows, if I end up regretting it when I get it, then it's yours anyway. But I probably shouldn't have even gotten the Quint one because it was friggin' $40. But it is an awesome pop.
And those oversized pops are nuts.
No, they're not cheap, and especially because it's an exclusive. So
yeah.
But as soon as I saw it, it's like, since we had talked about it, I had no choice in my mind that I wanted to get it. And the last thing toy related is the Star Wars Black Series stuff from Hasbro that they displayed, including the The Black Series, the new Hyper Real series, which is just another way to get people to spend like $80 for a figure. The Luke does look good. I would never spend that much on a regular action figure. I don't care if it's 6 inches or not. That's nuts. But the Boba Fett electronic helmet, the wearable helmet for Boba Fett fans, which I am not. But if you were a Boba Fett fan, probably I would bet some people for $120 will be plunking down money to get the Boba Fett helmet, because it does look cool.
Sorry. Speaking of Luke Skywalker, did you see that they announced some more pop icons?
Oh, the Mark Hamill ones, right?
Yeah. So there's two that I'm aware of. Mark Hamill just in like civilian gear, and then there's one of the same head but on a Joker outfit, which I think looks really freaking cool.
Yeah, I did see those.
Yeah, I kind of want a Mark Hamill pop now. That looks really cool. Because I mean, when you think the Joker, I hear that voice anytime I read the Joker. And that's just, I mean, so iconic. I love Batman. The animated series was such a pivotal part of my childhood. It's just like, yeah, to me, I mean, yeah, as much as Mark Hamill is Luke and always will be, primarily, I mean, a very, very, very close second is Mark Hamill is the Joker.
That would make sense. I completely agree with that.
So,
anything else from the general, or should we roll into the MCU?
I think that's it. I tried to find some toy news to see some stuff, maybe trying to find some photos, but just in terms of the amount of time I had to try and research and pull information, I just didn't have enough. I did see that a lot of people were very impressed with like Sideshow and Hot Toys this year, and I saw some of the things. You know, there was a who's doing Spider-Punk? Is it Sideshow?
I believe so. I think
okay, so their Sideshow had a glass case where they have a bunch of different Spider-Men in all their Sideshow collectibles Spider-Men, kind of, you know, in a kind of pillar, you know, you walk around the case and you can see all of them. And one of them was Spider-Punk, and I'm just like, man, the more I see it, the more I'm just like, oh, I want to spend money on it. But man, kind of like you. With that cap, man, it's just, do I want to spend that much money on what's essentially going to sit a toy / I mean, let's face it. You can say it's an action figure. It's essentially a statue. You can pose it, yes, but once you get that perfect pose, are you really going to mess with it that much? So it's essentially are you going to spend that much on a statue that's just going to sit there?
No, I still am wrestling with.
Hey man, me too with Spider-Punk.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking right at the Legends figure, and I think that's enough. And I've got my Spider-Punk pop figure, and I think that's enough. But like, God, does that Sideshow collectible Spider-Punk look awesome?
I know it's cheaper than Cap too.
Thanks.
However, see, this might make you feel better though, that it's. The one on being sold on Sideshow, the 6 scale by Hot Toys, it's you can't pre-order it anymore. You have to join the wait list.
Oh, jeez.
Because it's supposed to be coming out like in the next 2 months, August to September. So that's the reason why. So or maybe they didn't have that. They didn't allow that many pre-orders for this. So these Cap is still available and part of the reason might be because he's not supposed to ship until he's not even supposed. Between April and June next year. Oh, but he is still available, so I probably should make up my mind. But yeah, that's a lot of friggin' money to waste, quote unquote waste, on something that's just going to be sitting there.
Yeah. Especially
with shipping, it's going to be over $300, you know, with shipping. So.
Yeah, I still haven't bought myself a Green Lantern power battery prop, so like.
That's
priorities, Chad. All right, so man, we've been recording for an hour and a half now, so
longer than we thought. Hey, 2 episodes. Okay, let's do the TV. Let's do the TV shows first, and let's leave the movies to the end. For the MCU.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Might as well just.
Yeah, you go ahead. You go with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. first.
I don't have much to say, mostly because I'm not caught up on the current season. Haven't seen a single episode of the current season. They showed a sort of sizzle reel or trailer for the remaining episodes of this season. I did not watch it because, again, I'm not caught up on the current season, and I don't want to spoil myself for whatever may be spoiled about the current season in this trailer for the remaining episodes. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. will be ending with Season 7. As of San Diego Comic-Con, they had actually just filmed or were filming the final episode of Season 7. So that's how far ahead they are actually already in terms of content. So Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., in terms of the actors and the production staff and all that stuff, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is officially over. But it will be, in terms of content, it will be ending after Season 7. So it sucks. It's been on the way. It's been on the upswing for quite a while. A lot of people thought it would be over with season 5 or whatever, and then they renewed for season 6. And before season 6 even came out, they greenlit season 7, and people were like, "Holy shit!" Agents has gone from the first episode, just everybody, the first season, everybody just sort of reviled, to just been on this constant upswing to the point where we're greenlighting seasons before we even see the season that comes before it. Like that's awesome. But unfortunately, yes, it will be ending. I mean, if you're really thinking about it, they did cancel all those Netflix shows, and they got Disney Plus coming, so it was kind of a foregone conclusion that this was going to happen in some way, shape, or form. Makes me wonder what's going to happen to Runaways and stuff like that, or Cloak and Dagger. I haven't seen either of those shows, but I hear good things. It was just, they're on these different platforms, so what are they going to do with those? Are they going to continue? Are they going to cancel? Are they just going to move to Disney Plus? Are they going to stay where they are? But yeah, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is coming to an end.
Which makes sense, because in a way, even though they didn't tie into the Avengers all that much anymore, and even the day-to-day stuff that was going on with S.H.I.E.L.D. since early on in that show's run, it makes sense that would kind of go the way of the dinosaur, as well as a lot of the other stuff through fate that was existing in the MCU through 3 phases. So I guess that kind of does make a little bit of sense that at least it would kind of like exit stage left.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the new shows, and we're going to talk about this panel as a whole. To me, one of the big negatives of this panel was as far as projects, official projects that were announced that had dates and everything else. There wasn't really anything that came out in San Diego that we didn't already know was coming. And all the TV shows that they announced were shows that we already had known they were doing. They gave us a little more of a time frame from them, clearly, because they, for Disney Plus, but nothing was that surprising. Some details we got were a little interesting, and that's the main reason we're talking about. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that we knew was coming. That's going to be the first Disney Plus show. Most interesting thing there is that yes, Falcon, I guess, is going to be taking on a Captain America identity, and that Baron Zemo is going to be back as the villain. Which we kind of knew Zemo would be back at some point.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. WandaVision, which I believe is the second show coming out. Two most interesting things, or 3, I guess, about that show is that it takes place post Infinity War, as opposed to a lot of people thinking, it might take place between Civil War and Infinity War. No, this takes place after everything we saw in Infinity War, and thus almost an Endgame. So but yet the Vision is somehow either alive or alive in Wanda's mind. We don't know one way or the other. So that's just interesting upon itself that it's not a prequel. That pretty much none of the TV shows are prequels, which is important. And that Monica Rambeau, that we last saw as a child in Captain Marvel, will be all grown up and playing a role in the WandaVision show, which probably sets the stage for her arrival in the movies at some point. Loki, which is going to be the Endgame escape with the Tesseract alternate timeline Loki, who's still a bad guy. That show is that we're going to get that show. We're going to get the Hawkeye show, and we're going to get the What If animated series, which is the biggest thing I think that brings to the table, is the fact that besides they can do whatever stories they want, they are going to retain the MCU voice actors for their roles. So whatever story they're going to be doing, at least for the foreseeable future, they're going to be getting the actual, at least let's say the first season at least, for sure, they're going to be having the MCU actors play their respective characters. So what did you think of the TV show slate?
I was intrigued by it, and I want to know more, but at the same time, I've already been considering signing up for the DC Universe app, the DC Universe Online stuff, just because of the sheer amount of content. And, they did just come out with Shazam on Blu-ray, and the same day they came out with Shazam on Blu-ray, Titans Season 1 on Blu-ray came out. I picked that up too. You guys know I'm obsessed. I have to have the hard copies on the shelf of these various comic series. That's kind of my thing. Like for instance, I just I moved into this new apartment. I just set up my Blu-ray shelf on the wall, mounted it the other day, and opened up the box that had all my Blu-rays in it and started putting them on the shelf. And I took the time to actually not only put the MCU in order of release, but also try and look up where each season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fit in, so that I can make sure that, I put in season 1 where roughly it should go, and season 2 where it should go, and stuff like that. So even though I will be getting Doom Patrol season 1 on Blu-ray and Swamp Thing on Blu-ray, and they announced at Comic-Con actually that they'll be doing. They had remastered Batman the Animated Series last year or the year before and released that on Blu-ray. They're remastering Batman Beyond. So I'll be getting that as well. It actually comes with an exclusive pop, so double jeopardy for me. There's so much cool stuff on that DC Universe app. I've already been contemplating it. So when do I want to see this stuff? Of course. But it means getting Disney Plus. And I don't know if I can do multiple streaming services. I know, end of the day, they only cost X amount of bucks per month or whatever. It's not really that expensive when you come to think of it. But it's man, I just don't know. Because it's on a streaming service that I'll have to pay for, some of my enthusiasm for it wanes, because part of me, I don't know, maybe part of me is walling off and setting up expectations to go, well, you may not see this, so don't get too hyped. And maybe that's what's happening, but I don't know. Am I curious? If I'm curious about anything over any one of these, in terms of one of these specific ones, obviously Loki would probably be number one, but surprisingly, the Falcon Winter Soldier one is actually number one for me in terms of curiosity. So I would love to see where these things go, but I think part of me is setting expectations in the back of my mind.
I've kind of resigned myself to the fact that, barring anything unforeseen, I'm going to be getting Disney Plus. It might be. I don't think I'll be getting rid of Netflix immediately, but it's going to be harder to justify keeping Netflix if they're. And I understand they're between a rock and a hard place, but if everybody wants to have their own streaming services by default, that's going to limit the amount of non-original content that they can stream. New content from new movies that have been relatively recent movies. It's going to be harder and harder to get former first-run movies that have just been released in the last year or so and get them on the platform, because everybody's going to want to stick them on each studio is going to want to stick their own movies on their own platform. So if we go from feast to famine, having 8,000 places to go stream, or just having a couple. So I won't be dumping Netflix right away, but it's going to be harder to justify it because while there are some good shows on Netflix, I do like watching movies. I don't like having to binge watch everything or be able to have to watch episode after episode of stuff. Plus, their series tend to be relatively short in episodes, many of them, and then you got to wait forever to get another season. So, which of course, even with cable, we know, depending on the show, you have to do that too. But Disney Plus, it just seems like at some point it's a no-brainer. Besides the catalog of stuff they're going to have, they're going to have the Fox stuff. They're going to have, at some point, they're going to have all the Star Wars movies, all the Marvel movies, as much Disney as much Disney content as they want, along with all these shows. And especially since the WandaVision show is supposed to lead directly into Doctor Strange, it would be hard not. And plus, in a way, they're smart on one level because they're kind of feeding us, and we're going to talk about this in a second, what we're not getting for the most part in the movies is what we're going to be getting on their TV show, plus, streaming with Disney Plus, is giving us information regarding what characters we already know and care about, telling us what happened to them after Endgame. And that's what we didn't. I mean, the Loki stuff I could care. I mean, I can't say I couldn't care less because Loki's always intriguing, but it's not even our Loki. And yes, whether that Loki is going to end up on a journey which is going to kind of lead him towards the redemptive moment that our Loki got, who knows? I seriously doubt it would happen in one season. I mean, it depends if these shows are destined to only be one and done, or they plan on actually having several seasons, which they might very well be. They may very well do, considering their movie slate and how far out they go, which we'll talk about too. Not besides what they announced, that it's going to be a long time probably before we're going to see a lot of these characters back on the screen again, other than Scarlet Witch, maybe except for a cameo here and there in full action. It may be a while. So I'm intrigued, and I think it just adds more reason to get Disney Plus. But eventually, yes, people are going to have to make a decision. I mean, for you, if the Warner Brothers thing if the WB platform is more important, I get it. For some people, Netflix will be more important. And I'm not I like Netflix. I'm not gung ho to get rid of it, but they're going to be at a crossroads, and we can talk about that later. Anything else about the shows before we get to the...
Nah, not right now, no.
Well, as we roll into the movies, we should say congratulations to Endgame for finally going past Avatar.
True.
That was a little surprise. They must have... I still didn't break down the numbers over the weekend. I'm assuming they must have got a bigger surge overseas because they were still like $5 million away heading into the weekend. And it's doubtful that made it... It was... I think it made like around $500,000-$600,000 last weekend domestically, so it certainly didn't get that money domestically unless Disney was buying tickets. So it must have been a surge from the overseas market that pushed it over, but that's good. I didn't think it was going to happen now. I thought they were going to come up a little short, but it's good that even though they technically had to re-release a movie, it was not your traditional re-release, so it never truly left the theater at any time, and they were able to get over the hump. So that's cool. I'm glad that's good for them. So now we get into the big Marvel panel highlights, which they did it was kind of a odd choice from my perspective, how they kept alternating between TV shows and movies. But I guess based on what their short-term goal is versus long-term, it made sense because they wanted to prop up Disney Plus. Because Feige made it clear afterwards that they definitely they basically have a 5-year plan. As we know, there's a 3-year release schedule. They only announced 2 years worth of movies, but there are 8 movie dates locked in. They only announced 5. But supposedly he has 5. They have plans at least 5 years out. So they
did mention Guardians 3,
Captain Marvel 2, Black Panther 2, and Blade.
Yep.
Which is so those. And we'll talk about that in a second, where some of these are probably going to fit in based on the 3 movies dates that we still have left. And again, Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man 3 has to fit in there somewhere in the near future too, because you can't kick Spider-Man down the road too long. But they have 5-year plan, and then there's only 3 years of release date. So you would assume there's probably at least 6 more movies that will finish out Phase 5 that we don't know about. But what we do know, what they announced, the worst kept secret in Hollywood, the Black Widow will be your May 1st release in 2020. The Eternals, 11/6/20. That would be the second release. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which is to me mostly intriguing because it will bring in the real Mandarin and ties into stuff we already seen elements of in Iron Man and Iron Man 2, and supposedly hints, I believe, of in other movies. The movie I'm most interested in is 5/7/21, which is Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which will have Nightmare as the villain. It's supposed to be a horror movie, essentially, and will co-star Scarlet Witch Elizabeth Olsen, along with Doctor Strange. And then
Knew it.
Good.
Yeah, just gonna say I knew it. The Scarlet. I've said a couple of times. Scarlet Witch has to train with Doctor Strange. Like for such a long time, her power set has just been sort of this natural / nebulous unexplained thing. It's time for her to become the witch. So I'm glad they're doing it now instead of kicking that can down the road.
And it makes sense, and it's good. It is interesting that from a live continuity, as in a character, an Avenger being live, that with seeing a story in current continuity, as it's possible if we don't get cameos in other movies, that Wanda might actually be the first Avenger we actually see in Phase 4 live in current continuity, not in a flashback, not in a prequel. That it could be interesting that, because it's kind of hard to imagine there being an Avenger in the Eternals, and Shang-Chi, I guess it's possible, but I think it's harder to see it happening in the Eternals. And then last but not least, the Thor, which is kind of interesting unto itself. If we were talking about this a month ago and somebody asked us whether Thor was going to be in Phase 4 or not, we might not have been and maybe. But if somebody said, do you think Thor's going to be released in the next 2 years? I think we both would have said no way. That Thor 4 definitely was. But before Comic-Con even started, we knew that was a done deal. But Taika Waititi back to write this time, and direct Thor 4. Then the announcement of Thor 4 actually made its way in. It's the November 21 release. That is not really that surprising, especially because it was kind of confirmed also after the fact by James Gunn. Not just that Thor 4 will take place before Guardians 3, but Guardians 3 was pushed out of Phase 4 because of his work on the Suicide Squad and those delays. So basically we got 5 movies, again, none of which were a surprise. We knew pretty much all of these movies were coming. Thor, up until like a week ago, might have been a surprise that it was that was coming this soon. But either way, none of these we all knew heading into Comic-Con all these projects were coming. We also knew, they didn't give us any real surprise casting news about Black Widow. The Eternals, we had heard about almost all of that casting ahead of time too. Richard Madden, Rob Stark there from Game of Thrones. We heard about Salma Hayek, Angelina Jolie. At least had been heavily rumored. I don't think it was officially announced, but she was heavily rumored to be in the Eternals. So none of that I don't think any of that was a surprise. It was a surprise for Thor that Natalie Portman was back, because of the fact that she supposedly has made it clear that she wasn't thrilled with her role in Thor and Thor 2. But now that you realize that how she had a pretty large presence in like some of the Endgame presentation premieres and events, that I guess it made sense that that probably was the reason why she was being kind of like she was back on center stage. Now, talking about Thor. Or do we maybe before I monopolize? Where do you want to begin? Which movie would you like to talk about first?
Love and Thunder. I'm excited for it, man. Like, I read the Jason Aaron stuff. I was very curious about female Thor, and Jane Foster's kind of story there. I think it was kind of like the worst kept secret that it was Jane Foster all along. For a while there, but Jane Foster. I'd be curious: are they going to go the cancer route? Does Jane Foster have cancer, and is that part of this story or not? I don't know. We'll see how much of the actual Jason Aaron story happens. It's cool that Valkyrie's involved in this. That's really cool and exciting as well. What's interesting is actually this week. So you guys will. I don't know. Are we releasing this early? So
we can, as long as we get it. Yeah, everything.
Like Wednesday or so.
Yeah, because it gives us more time to make sure the timestamps and everything are done before we roll it out too.
Okay, so let's say this hits Wednesday, guys. Assuming you're listening to this the day it hits, as you hear this, the first issue of the new Valkyrie series from Marvel just came out, and that follows Jane Foster as a Valkyrie. Because spoilers at the end of the Jason Aaron series, Jane Foster finally dies from her battle with cancer. And now she's in the afterlife, and she's now a Valkyrie, leading people into Valhalla and the various other realms after death and stuff like that. So I'll actually be picking that up out of curiosity, so where they go with that. So, my problem in all of this equation is not that they're going to do the Jason Aaron Thor. It's not that Valkyrie's heavily involved. It's not that it's called Love and Thunder. None of this stuff. My problem is that I just don't buy Natalie Portman as Jane Foster. Granted, other than Thor 1, we haven't had quite enough time with her to really flesh her out, because the focus in Thor 1, that was the most time you had with her for the most part. You could say Dark World maybe, but in Dark World she's more to just sort of a human reacting to Asgard, as opposed to her own agency. So in terms of own agency, the most you see of her is in the first Thor movie, but obviously the priority there is setting up Thor in the MCU, not her. So just by fault of happenstance, you just don't have too much to go off of with or too much for Natalie to kind of dig her teeth into. And it's not that Natalie Portman isn't a fantastic actress and able to kind of really embody and make some characters really compelling and stuff. It's just that so far Natalie Portman as Jane Foster, I haven't seen it yet. I'm excited to see it, but since you haven't given it to me yet, you can't make me excited about it. So, and the other thing I'll add is that the logo for Thor Love and Thunder makes it look like, I'm in a dimly lit arcade and I turn the corner and there's an old 80s arcade game staring me in the face, and backlit is Thor Love and Thunder. I just got to put in my 25 cents to play.
Yeah, it does look like a video game. So I think I'm with again, I don't know if it's the majority or not. I think I'm with certainly a sizable percentage of. I went from being really enthused about Thor 4, when we heard like about a week or so ago when that became official that we were getting that, to having a lot of my enthusiasm sucked out by knowing that they were doing at least some version. Now again, we don't know how they're going to adapt it, but the idea of the Thor, Jane is Thor, that I have really no interest in that, and it just seems like, and I conceptually I have an issue with the idea of Thor being a legacy or a title as opposed to a person. I just don't buy that. I just don't think that works.
Well, it's on a hammer.
Well, not really. It just they say it possesses you can possess the power of Thor. I mean, but Thor is a character. It's like Thor in mythology was a character. That was his name. It wasn't a title. It was who he was. So the idea of just because you can wield the power and have the power of Thor doesn't mean you're really Thor. Like Cap wasn't Thor. He just had the power of Thor.
Yeah, but the problem there is Jane. It's there have been multiple the characters. What Thunderstrike? He had the mantle. There's the, I mean, you could say Throg, but like the Beta Ray Bill, when he was in Thor mode, a lot of people referred to him as Thor, not Beta, or Ray or Bill or whatever. There are several examples in Marvel history, not just this recent Jason Aaron female Thor Jane Foster run, of people picking up the hammer and being referred to as Thor when they transform.
I know, but obviously the current era is when they really tried to revamp that a little bit more. There's always been stuff. I remember when they did the Red Norval thing being Thor, because of the idea when Odin was trying to really save Thor from Ragnarok and him having to die, that basically he allowed Red Norval to be Thor, so he would be the one who would end up getting killed by the Midgard serpent and things of that nature. I understand from a comic book perspective it's not 100% new, but it kind of follows the line of the more recent trends, which is, the Spencer Captain America and the Superior Spider-Man and things like that, where it's like, it's just not what I really want to see. And Thor should be, Thor. Chris Hemsworth should be Thor, and that should be the focal point. Now, we don't know how they're going to do it, so hopefully it's going to be a temporary spiel in that movie, and by the end, Hemsworth is, there's only one Thor again, and it's. But the idea they were going that route kind of sucked the enthusiasm from that a little bit, not entirely, but a little bit of that for that project out of me. So my interest in that movie dropped a lot. I don't have any interest in the Eternals whatsoever. That's going to have to sell me on. That's going to be visual, and we're going to have to see something that draws me in. But the Eternals, most people don't know who the hell the Eternals are. Even a lot of comic book fans really don't know who the hell, in the big picture, don't know much about the Eternals. So that's
Kevin Feige said on stage, it is straight Jack Kirby. So that so far has been the kind of oft-quoted thing involving Eternals that has that people who are excited for when he said straight Jack Kirby.
And that's also probably yet another way to try to cockblock DC from doing the New Gods, which doesn't matter anyway, because in the big picture, people don't like the New Gods. That's a horrible decision as a project for DC to do. The New Gods.
Well, yeah, but if the two sides of the coin are New Gods or Eternals, who's more popular?
Oh yes, you are correct that you're both taking relatively obscure groups of godlike beings, but with Kirby on them. And you are correct. Given the choice of the lesser of the two evils, the Eternals are the better way to go. That being said, it's still a relatively obscure group, and DC is just more. They're just showing you that they're aimless because the New Gods on a good day are not overly popular. And we've seen this over and over again. It's like bringing back, which they're going to do again, right? Right, the Legion of Superheroes is coming back, right? They're bringing it back again? Are they not bringing it back again? But that's going to have an incredibly short shelf life too, because they're not overly popular. So they can just keep doing this till the cows come home, but eventually, unless you get the lightning in the bottle of the right approach with the right creative team, and even that might not last forever. But the reality is, the New Gods are that's a horrible, and that combination of what King and what's her face who did your movie, Wrinkle in Time. That's just not that's a risky combination too. But
Tom King just won an Eisner for the Mr. Miracle series.
That's right, but a lot of people don't like the crap that Tom King writes, especially Heroes in Crisis and his own personal baggage that he tends to bring to stuff. But I'm not saying that why DC or why WB would want to bring him in. I'm just saying that it's a really weird project from focusing on those characters. But back to the Eternals. The Eternals is going to be a hard sell. Jim and I were talking about this. Shang-Chi may be guaranteed to do huge money because of the Chinese box office. Domestically, that's a risky project. They may frame it nicely where it works, but that's not a slam dunk domestically. And if you look at the first three movies they release in this phase, Black Widow is going to be successful because it's Black Widow, and you're going to have some nostalgia from the Avengers and interest and everything else. But Black Widow, if I had to bet money what Black Widow was going to be, certainly domestically, box office wise, I'd say it's going to be closer to Ant-Man and the Wasp than it's going to be Captain Marvel. I don't see Black Widow being, a huge, 700, 800, whatever Captain Marvel did domestically. So something real, a huge number domestically, and it being $1 billion movie overall. I don't see that with Black Widow. I don't see she has that kind of draw. But that movie will make money because it's Black Widow, which is why it's a May release, because Marvel is very picky about their May releases. They've had 10 May releases, and 10 counting the two Infinity Avenger movies, which were supposed to be May releases, and were both moved up. Yet all three Iron Man movies were May. All 4 Avengers movies were supposed to be May. You had Guardians 2, you had Thor, and you had Civil War. So they didn't release anything in May that they weren't confident about as a property. So you knew they weren't going to release the Eternals in May, because that was, or even Shang-Chi, because it made no sense. Black Widow was just like Doctor Strange, based on what was available. They could have released Thor, probably, Thor 4 in May, if they wanted to in 2021 from a box office perspective. But you knew Black Widow would do fine. But if you look at having the Eternals and Shang-Chi back-to-back, I would go out on the limb and say that's the riskiest 1-2 punch from a scheduling perspective they've ever had. Because I don't think they've ever put two risky projects back-to-back. And yet they had them back-to-back. And yeah, again, Shang-Chi probably won't cost a crap load of money, and it'll probably guarantee to make like friggin' $400 million just because of the Chinese box office. But still, domestically, you can't say that movie's guaranteed to be a slam dunk major hit. You don't know. Doctor Strange and Thor are the ones I think are the safest, are the ones that are most likely to do big bucks. And Thor is probably the one at the moment that's most likely to do the biggest. But only Doctor Strange excites me for these projects. I mean, and like we talked about before, what was the whole point of being so secretive about this if they weren't going to give us anything that we didn't already know? Having the reveal of Mahershala Ali as Blade, which that was a curveball, but it was like a 70-80% curveball, not 100% based on timing. But only like a 70% curveball overall, because we know they've been talking about Blade, because there were talks about even Wesley Snipes coming back to be Blade, because we knew they had the property back. It's intriguing bringing Blade back in, because if you're bringing Blade in, obviously you're going to have vampires, and that obviously opens the door for werewolves and the whole monster side of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But they only gave us movies that we already knew. They only gave us 2 years worth of movies, even though I guess that was an internal debate in Marvel about whether they should announce all of Phase 5, because they do have 5 years down the road. But they only gave us 2. There are 3 years. There's 3 movies they've released dates for that they have not matched up yet. You have February 2022, which is almost guaranteed, in my opinion, to be Black Panther. They're going to want to release that in February again, Black History Month. You have May 2022, which, barring something unforeseen, will be Guardians, because Guardians is a slam dunk. And they don't want to push Guardians back too much further. I mean, it's going to be 5 years now between Guardians movies. They get a break a little bit because the Guardians were so heavily featured in Infinity War. But it's 5 years. It's just like Doctor Strange is going to be close to 5 years. That's going to be a few months short of 5 years, as hard as it is to believe, since the original. And then you have a end of July 29th, 2022 movie. And if I had to bet based on what they're likely to stick there, I would say that's probably going to be Blade. Because I think they would want to have a bigger profile release window for Captain Marvel. And I don't think they want, and it's a little late for Spider-Man, because Spider-Man would be the beginning of July. And I don't think they were going to dump the Fantastic Four in July either. So I would say Blade, in my opinion, Blade is probably going to be the July 2022 release. And then Captain Marvel will be in 2023. Fantastic Four will probably be in 2023. Probably. And then whenever they decide to roll out the X-Men. But it was interesting. We talked about, how some of the... We always talk about how some of these articles, how they misrepresent things, and I kind of went off on MovieWeb, and that's kind of why when I made that point about heaven forbid you have a different opinion or something, even though you follow, it's because I still get MovieWeb's updates and stuff on Facebook and everything, but it doesn't mean that I can't call bullshit when I see something bullshit. So their headline right after Comic-Con was Marvel announces Phase 4 or I forget how they phrased it. They either said Phase 4 first, or they said Fantastic Four, X-Men, Guardians 3, and then they said Phase 4. But they tied them all together where, of course, if you just read the headline, you would think all those movies were going to be in Phase 4. And it's like, not only are not in Phase 4, none of them have release dates. Saying the Fantastic Four is coming was not a friggin' announcement. We know the Fantastic Four is coming. They didn't reacquire these properties to never do anything with them. That was a non-announcement. Blade was a little bit more of a non-announcement because at least we realized, Blade is being fast-tracked, and there's a reasonable expectation we're going to see that probably within the next couple of years. Fantastic Four, we knew we were getting, and he even said originally, you're probably not going to see it between something like around maybe 4 to 5 years, which is probably going to be accurate. Unless, of course, the Eternals or Shang-Chi horribly tank, and then they may change their priorities and try to get something a little more mainstream out. But I was disappointed by that panel. I thought there wasn't nothing of relevance. That certainly not to be so as secretive as they were for as long as they were, especially about the Black Widow crap, which we knew they were making because they were filming it. Why play games? That's the stuff that kept annoying me. And then once we had the actual panel, it's like, okay, there was very little to get super excited about because we knew all this pretty much. We knew 98% of what they told us.
I'd agree with you on that. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not excited. It's just that, I like the idea. I like the idea of a Shang-Chi movie. I mean, I know it's an unknown quantity or whatever, but I'm sort of stoked for that. Like I said, I'm cool with Love and Thunder. The idea that I said it a while back. I wanted Scarlet Witch to be training with Doctor Strange in the first place. Now that we're getting it, it's obvious. I'm going to be psyched for that. Plus, you build in the fact that people seem to be more excited about Doctor Strange following Infinity War and Endgame. That it'll probably help bump that. So, I mean, for me personally, the only real unknown quantity is the Eternals. But man, I mean, this is a Comic-Con that involved both Tom Cruise and Angelina Jolie. Like, these are huge names, and you put Angelina Jolie and Salma Hayek and Kumail Nanjiani and stuff.
I love me some Salma Hayek. Sorry.
So the cast of Eternals is massive. I'm not just talking about in terms of the amount of people, but the amount of clout that is behind it is pretty huge. So to me, that belies some sort of extreme faith that this is where they need to go next. So I mean, don't get me wrong. Law of averages says that at some point we're going to get a turd, and we can keep saying that it's going to be this one or it's going to be this one, but for now I haven't seen a turd, so I'm not going to call the next one a turd. So right now, if they're going to put this much clout behind Eternals, and if it's this much clout, they're going to spend this much money on that clout, then I guess I'll have to have faith in Eternals. So
I will give them credit for clearly they have a plan, and even before they announce they have a 5-year plan, that they clearly have a plan, and going in this direction, they feel this is the right move for them. I think it is risky, and you give them credit because they're doing this, and it's clearly risky to do the approach that they're doing. Because clearly on the surface, the movies that we're getting early on are not going to be as interconnected by choice as Phase 1 through 3 were. And not every part of all those, and not every movie was connected to the next, but they eventually all connected. Which by the way, these are still supposed to in some way because Feige did talk about that. They basically do have the plan for for the next Avengers, and acknowledging what we kind of already know, that when we see them again, it's going to be a much different looking team. But that being said, on the surface, there's a lot less connective tissue. And plus, they are leaving, and this is why I think they're doing what they're doing with the shows. They are leaving us with a lot of the characters we've already come to care about. They're kind of leaving them high and dry. And it doesn't mean we're not going to, just because we have this movie or that movie, it doesn't mean we're not, we know the Hulk is not going to get his own solo movie, so the Hulk can show up in another project. Doesn't mean Ant-Man can show up in another project, because Ant-Man's another movie that if you're looking at what wasn't announced, Ant-Man really, you'd have to think that Paul Rudd might very well be right, or it's going to be a long time coming when he said he didn't think they were going to probably get a Ant-Man 3. That if you look at all the projects they have swirling about that don't even have release dates. When you have Captain Marvel, you got Spider-Man 3, you have Guardians 3, you have Black Panther, you have Fantastic Four. That's already 5 movies, and they can only release 3 in 2022. So Black Panther, I mean, it's Ant-Man. You're looking at Ant-Man. Realistically speaking, there's no reason to think that Ant-Man's going to be coming out anywhere before like 2024, probably, if they're going to do that. You know, like if he's getting his own movie as opposed to co-starring in something. So they're making a decision. They're making a decision because Endgame and obviously Spider-Man Far From Home was an ending, and they're branching out, but they're also in the process potentially alienating people because they're leaving behind a lot of characters that we've grown to have a lot of invested in, and they're going in a direction which is risky because they're going with at least 2 B-tier movies, and based on recognition factor. Now, if Black Widow comes out and Black Widow kicks real ass at the box office, and does like Captain Marvel like money, then they got a lot of then the Eternals is probably safe, because no matter what, people are going to go see. They're going to just go into the next Marvel movie. Now, she could get a bump. She could get a little of Avengers bump. I mean, you certainly can make a case Spider-Man got an Avengers bump, but that's also because Spider-Man was so directly tied to it. But because of what happened with Natasha and Endgame, you could end up getting a bump because of the ties, the emotional ties to her. We'll see what happens, but the Eternals is going to be challenging. In a way, I think that one's the most challenging. I think that's going to be. I think the trailers are really going to have to sell that movie. And I agree with you. Their track record is good. They have dodged some bullets so far on projects that on the surface seem like there's no way this can be a big hit. You know, the original Guardians. I'm not going to say Ant-Man because Ant-Man he's not overly known, but Ant-Man was not as obscure as Guardians of the Galaxy. But Captain Marvel had a lot of pushback with her because of Brie Larson. So, but so far they've been able to dodge bullets. Eventually, they're not going to dodge everything, just because, as you said, law of averages, it just can't happen. Eventually, they're going to have a turd, and it may not even be because the movie's bad. It's just going to be because the movie doesn't appeal to people. The more obscure you dig, you increase the odds. Even Blade. I mean, I see Blade being successful, but I don't see Blade being I can't see Blade being a $500 million domestic movie. I have a hard time imagining that. So I don't know. I still think I'm still not as enthused about this phase. Only Doctor Strange really excites me. Thor I'm less excited than I was, but I'm still interested. Then I would say it's Black Widow, Shang-Chi, and then the Eternals. The Eternals is the one I have the least interest in. But we're gonna find out, and I don't know. It's certainly going to be quite a challenge to see if they pull this off. But if they do pull this off, forget about it, man. Besides the fact that their egos are going to go through a roof, it's going to be they're going to be untouchable for a long time, because it's like literally, we'll do Squirrel Girl next, $700 million, and it's a real squirrel wearing a dress, $700 million. But it is what it is.
All right. Anything else?
Knowing us, probably, but I don't have any notes written down, so let's just work on the assumption that no, the answer is there isn't anything else.
All right. You want to tell people how they can reach us?
Yes, LanternCast.com. The email is LanternCast@gmail.com. We are on iTunes and Stitcher, so whichever platform you're listening to us on, please leave us a positive review. On Facebook and Twitter, #GLCast. You can locate us on either of those using that hashtag. And last but not least, 708 Lantern is the voicemail. 708 Lantern, and let us know what you think.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you later.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.